My name is and contrary to what you might expect, I'm not the archetypal high-powered executive strutting around in designer heels. Although my father is a prominent figure in the business world with a company so massive it almost has its zip code, and despite my pricey education, I've always been more comfortable in a simple cubicle than a luxurious corner office. My family isn't thrilled about it. They envisioned a different path for me. My brother Lien is the family's shining star, groomed to take over our father's empire, while I've made it clear that the corporate throne is not my destiny. I'd rather avoid the drama and pressure of leadership. Then there's Cannon. Imagine this. I'm out trying to relax with friends at a rundown bar when Cannon walks in, tray in hand and a smile that stops you in your tracks. He might be just a waiter, but there's something about him that's refreshingly genuine. His simplicity and outlook on life felt like a breath of fresh air. We started talking, and soon it became clear that we clicked. Our interests, hobbies, and perspectives aligned perfectly. When my parents learned about Cannon, they couldn't hide their amusement. A waiter? They would chuckle as if I'd brought home a creature from another planet. They saw him as just a casual fling, but for me, it was serious. He's real. He understands me, I would argue, frustrated by their narrow views. My dad wasn't pleased either, criticizing my choice to play house with a boy who serves drinks. But Cannon was different. He wasn't about chasing money or status. He was about genuinely living life, which was exactly what I wanted. I stood firm, telling my parents, I love him. He's not caught up in all this, gesturing to the heavy expectations that hung over our family. They might have thought it was just a phase, but I knew better. Cannon proposed in his typical straightforward manner. No dramatic gestures, just an honest, marry me, and it took me a moment, but then it all made sense. Yes, let's do it, I found myself saying, ready to commit to the man who may have served drinks for a living but had captured my heart completely. From the marriage meeting, it was a whirlwind. We didn't even bring him home before we decided to tie the knot. It might sound impulsive, but it felt right, just moving forward together, no looking back. The wedding was modest, with only close family present. My father, a titan of industry, watched in disbelief as his daughter married a waiter in a ceremony that probably cost less than one of his typical business lunches. But to me, it was perfect, simple, genuine, and true to who we are. But here's the truth. Despite how much my dad looked like he wanted to be anywhere else during the wedding, he showed up when it mattered. After the ceremony, he pulled me aside. With his characteristic roughness, he managed up congratulations, and it wasn't the warm embrace I had hoped for, but coming from him, it held weight. So there we were, Cannon and I, officially married against all odds, our union a small rebellion founded on love and a sprinkle of defiance. Our quaint apartment quickly exposed the realities of everyday life. To me, the space felt snug and homely, but for Cannon, it was a surprising shift. One evening, as we navigated our cramped kitchen, I tried to find out his true thoughts about our new living arrangement. So, you're really okay with this place? It's a bit different from what you were expecting, right? Cannon paused, his attempt at a smile, not quite hiding his hesitation. Yeah, it's snug. I didn't expect a palace, but it's fine. It's got character, he remarked, though his words seemed to carry a heavier load of unspoken thoughts. Tensions around domestic chores began to surface early on. Cannon's reluctance to engage in household duties became a frequent sore point. He wasn't overwhelmed with work. His part-time job afforded him plenty of free time. Cannon, the dishes are piling up. Can you help out a bit? I asked one night, my voice tinged with fatigue. Come on, and you know I'm all thumbs with this stuff. Can't we just get takeout or something? He responded, his once charming grin wearing thin. The topic of career progression, or my deliberate avoidance of it, became a recurring issue. Cannon couldn't grasp my choice to stay in a non-leadership role at my father's company. Babe, you've got to think about the future. When are you planning to step up at work? There's so much potential for you there, he pressed, his frustration mounting. I sighed, the conversation too familiar. Cannon, we've talked about this. I'm happy where I am. I don't need a title to find fulfillment. But Cannon persisted, that's just it, and you could have both the title and the happiness. You're not seeing the big picture, his patience fading. Our talks grew more strained, and one particularly harsh exchange left a lasting scar on our relationship. Understand that I'm not driven by the same things as you. I don't measure my worth by a job title or a fat paycheck, I tried to explain, seeking some understanding. Cannon's face showed disbelief and frustration. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And you're sitting on a gold mine of opportunity, and you're too blind to see it, he blurted out, his words slicing deeply. Is that what you think of me? That I'm blind? Stupid? I retorted, the pain evident in my voice. No, and I just think you could do so much more, Cannon replied, his tone softer. But the damage was already done. Our once peaceful home turned into a battleground of ideals and expectations. The man I had married, who once shared my dreams of simplicity and genuine connection, seemed to have disappeared, replaced by someone I hardly recognized. The days were long and draining, and I found myself longing for nothing more than to kick off my shoes and collapse on the couch, escaping the growing divide between us. But it seemed the universe had its twist in store for me. As soon as I stepped into our apartment, my heart dropped. Water was everywhere. The neighbors upstairs had somehow turned their mishap with indoor plumbing into an impromptu water feature, transforming our modest living space into a makeshift pool. With a deep sigh, I called my parents, my voice shaky, as I relayed the soggy disaster at hand. After a tense pause, a silence that felt thick with unspoken thoughts, my dad's voice finally came through, softer and warmer than usual. Of course you both can stay here. We'd be glad to have you. I could nearly see the reluctant smile in his tone. It was a relief, certainly, but it also signaled the beginning of an awkward chapter. Moving in with my parents as a newlywed was not how I pictured the start of married life with Cannon. Yet that was our new reality about to unfold. While it was comforting to have a roof over our heads, the dread of how this temporary arrangement might affect our relationship loomed large. My parents' mansion was worlds apart from our humble apartment, both in size and spirit. I wondered how Cannon would adapt to this new luxury and what it might mean for our future together. As these thoughts swirled in my mind, I began packing for what I hoped would be a short stay. Cannon was skeptical. Your parents' place? That's our best option. He groaned while we packed, his tone mixing disbelief with annoyance. Yeah, really? Unless you're hiding a luxury condo somewhere, I replied, trying to inject some lightness into the situation. He didn't respond, just continued packing in silence, his thoughts on independence and pride barely concealed. The moment we stepped into the mansion, I felt Cannon stiffen. The opulence of my childhood home had never really affected me, but through Cannon's eyes, it was as if we'd landed on a different planet. Wow. Just wow, Cannon murmured, his usual confidence diminishing slightly with each step. Surprisingly, it was my dad who attempted to break the ice first. Welcome. Make yourselves at home, he said, his smile more formal than inviting. Cannon managed a tight-lipped smile in return. The first few days were stiff and uncomfortable. Cannon seemed lost, wandering the halls like a tourist, while I tried to manage the sudden shift in our dynamics. Cannon's frustration eventually found its voice during dinner one evening. So, when do I get the grand tour of the family biz? Maybe find a little corner office for me, he joked, though the underlying tension was palpable to everyone, especially my dad, who nearly choked on his drink, laughing it off before responding. The company's son? It takes more than ambition. It takes years of training and the right background, he stated pointedly, his words both polite and decisively dismissive. Cannon's face turned a shade of deep red, a mix of embarrassment and irritation evident. Right, of course, silly me, he muttered, pushing his food around his plate. Later, in the privacy of our temporary room, Cannon's frustration boiled over. Can you believe him? The right background. What's that supposed to mean? He fumed, pacing back and forth. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to calm the storm. Cannon, you know how my dad is. He didn't mean, I started, but Cannon cut me off. Didn't mean what, Anne? That I'm not good enough? Because that's exactly how it sounded, he said, his anger cresting. The chasm between his world and mine had never felt so wide, and as I watched him pace, I realized just how much we'd have to overcome to bridge it. Life wasn't just about meeting standards, it was about dealing with his unique approach. "Hang in there, we're not at the end yet. We'll find a way," I reassured him, attempting to ease the palpable tension. As I reached for his hand, he pulled back gently, his initial anger giving way to a deeper, more vulnerable hurt. "It's really difficult, you know? I always feel like an outsider, even when I'm right here with you," he confessed. Our conversation lingered unresolved, echoing the growing rift between our different realities. Cannon struggled to navigate the silent expectations of my family and the unresolved issues that loomed between us. It was like a precarious mix, volatile and unpredictable. In our apartment, life seemed to momentarily regain its rhythm, or at least that's what I thought. However, as weeks unfolded into months, Cannon's presence dwindled, his absences grew longer, and our home began to feel more like an abandoned place marked by the remnants of his chaotic mornings and late nights, strewn with dirty laundry, neglected dishes, and the echoing silence of missed dialogues. Whenever I questioned him, he always had the same excuse: "Work's overwhelming. You know how it goes." But I felt there was something else keeping him away. Feeling more alone than ever, I reached out to Raiden, an old family friend and head of security at my dad's firm. To me, Raiden was akin to an uncle, always ready to offer advice or lend a hand. "Raiden, I'm worried about Cannon. Can you watch over him for a bit?" "Something doesn't seem right," I asked, my voice heavy with concern. "And you know I'm here for you." "It's taken care of," Raiden assured me, his tone serious yet comforting. Raiden's investigation soon brought devastating news. Cannon wasn't just tied up at work. He was involved in an affair. The woman, a fixture of wealth often seen near Cannon at his workplace, embodied the opulence I had always steered clear of. The irony of it all was bitter. Cannon, who once found my modest lifestyle endearing, was now enchanted by someone whose life screamed of the luxury I had avoided. With irrefutable evidence in hand, I confronted Cannon. Upon seeing the photos, his facade fell away, revealing defiance and contempt. "So what?" "Yes, she's driven, youthful, stunning, everything you are not," he retorted harshly, his words striking me like a venom-laced dart. The immediate sharp pain was a harsh contrast to the gradual, numbing realization that the man I once loved, the man I married, was now a stranger. "I want a divorce," I stated clearly, the words bitter in my mouth. It was a definitive statement, not a question nor a plea. Cannon's mocking laughter ceased, replaced by a quiet nod of resignation. "Fine," he agreed simply, and just like that, our marriage was over. The divorce unfolded in a haze, defined by signatures and quiet meals, each of us ensconced in our solemn thoughts. When everything was finalized, Cannon departed, taking the last vestiges of our shared existence and leaving behind a deep void filled with betrayal and sorrow. Upon disclosing the divorce to my parents, their reaction was tinged more with relief than sorrow. "We never understood what you saw in him," my father confessed, barely concealing his relief after my marriage. It was over, but deep down I knew they were right. The distance between Cannon and me had grown too vast, a reality that became excruciatingly clear by the end. Cannon, ever relentless, kept returning with new aliases, spouting the same tired lines. It was then I knew it was time for a replay of the past. I reached out to Raiden, our head of security. "Raiden, it's showtime again. Can you keep an eye on Cannon? I suspect he's all talk and no substance." Raiden agreed immediately, no questions asked. The report he later handed me was both amusing and enlightening. Cannon, living the high life? More like a facade of grandeur. His supposedly extravagant lifestyle was nothing but smoke and mirrors. The luxury cars were rented, and the lavish vacations were charged to his new wife's dime. Going through the report, I couldn't help but chuckle. Cannon was the same as ever, chasing after the shiny and superficial, mistaking it for treasure. Flipping through the pages, each one confirmed that leaving him was the right decision. The Cannon I thought I knew was nothing more than an illusion, and I was done wandering in that mirage. I sat back, tossing the report about Cannon's glamorous life aside, and smiled, not because of his downfall, but because I was in command of my narrative, clear on my direction. Weeks later, at a networking event essential to my role as a CEO, I spotted Cannon. There he was, arm in arm with his new wife, playing the part of a man who had moved on to supposedly better things. He never missed a chance to boast. As they passed, he nudged his wife and pointed at me, loud enough for me to overhear. "That's my ex-wife over there." She never really made much of herself. His wife giggled, a sound that echoed sharply across the room. It stung, but only momentarily. I was about to leave the conversation behind when an older gentleman approached, his face flushed with indignation. "Young man, how dare you speak of and in that manner?" he bellowed, drawing attention from nearby attendees. "Do you realize who she is? She's the CEO of her father's company, highly successful, and a potential investor for us." Cannon's confident demeanor drained away, and his smirk was replaced by a stunned expression. He struggled to speak, but no coherent words came out. His wife, previously amused, now appeared mortified, absorbing her father's scolding. Seizing the moment, I decided to deepen Cannon's embarrassment. "You know, he wasn't just seeing you when we had our problems," I told her calmly. "There were others, and it seems his old habits persist." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo Raiden had taken, depicting Cannon close with another woman, clearly not his wife. Her reaction was immediate. Her expression crumbled into a mix of hurt and fury. "You're lying," she shrieked at me, but a glance at Cannon's face confirmed her fears. What followed was chaotic, a frenzy of shouting and accusations, as Cannon scrambled to placate his irate wife. The unfolding scene was a spectacle of his making, and as I walked away, I felt the weight of that chapter fully close behind me. At the gathering, I caught myself smiling as I discreetly observed the attendees attempting not to gawk too openly. Turning on my heel, I walked away, reflecting on how Cannon's life was coming apart. While I found no pleasure in his distress, there was an undeniable sense of poetic justice in witnessing karma unfold. Since our last encounter, I had evolved, becoming more resilient and successful than Cannon could have ever envisioned. Following the debacle at the event, Cannon's reputation plummeted. His wife, having had enough of his infidelities, ended their marriage. The extravagant life he once boasted about quickly crumbled as his father-in-law repossessed the luxurious car and upscale apartment Cannon was so proud of. His high society friends disappeared faster than a wisp of smoke, leaving him isolated and struggling. The last I heard, he was back to waiting tables, buried under a mountain of debt accumulated from maintaining a facade of prosperity. Reflecting on the past, I recalled how Cannon had ridiculed my modest lifestyle and aspirations. Now, he was the one hustling to make ends meet, a stark contrast to his earlier arrogance. While I harbored no ill wishes towards him, part of me felt this was an inevitable reckoning. Amidst this turmoil, something remarkable happened. I met someone new. Let's call him Jack. Jack is the antithesis of Cannon, grounded, unpretentious, and values sincerity, hard work, and genuine laughter over a simple cup of coffee. Jack and I connected instantly, with no pretenses, just two people relishing each other's presence and appreciating the simpler pleasures of life. It's refreshing to be with someone who understands the importance of authenticity, not needing the dazzle of glamour to feel significant. This turn of events has shown me that life tends to come full circle. I've weathered numerous challenges, overcome betrayals, and emerged stronger. Meeting Jack and witnessing Cannon's downfall has been part of this incredible journey. It feels as though I've turned the page on a painful chapter and embarked on a new one brimming with hope and genuine contentment.